We've had great, 5 great workouts, including the bye week and yesterday. Not only for us, but obviously South Dakota. I think we've attacked the process of some things that we need to get better at through some NDSU on NDSU work. One of the things I wanted to bring to you guys' attention, just some, little inside information, is we've had an 8-week training session here. I've talked about it a lot, but we had 20 plus guys, okay, on the travel team, okay, guys, all right, 20 plus guys, bench max increased and went up, and we've had 100% of the full active healthy guys, okay, squat last week 95% of their 1 rep max. That's 8 weeks into football, and so we're really pleased with that part of the process as far as trying to be a stronger, bigger, stronger team going into Missouri Valley play. We'll see if that pays off. Bye week provided a great self-scout opportunity, and then at the same time trying to cultivate and create an edge for this ball game coming up Saturday. Defensively, from a self-scout standpoint, we really do still feel like our block destruction, violently escaping away from blocks can improve. It's not an effort thing, but it's attention to detail with our horizontal and vertical leverage. Number 2, our takeaways can be executed better. Yeah, we're +3 in the turnover margin right now, but we do feel like we got to get a ball punched out or two, and we got to make a better break on a ball and cultivate a few more takeaways. That's coming from Grant. Our young guys, it's interesting. We have cultivated depth in all 3 areas through the first 3 weeks and getting those guys some time, but it's not just time when they're going out and executing. The safeties in particular, those 5 guys that have played, the disguises look the same. They're really operating and functioning at a high level. So we thought from a self-scout standpoint, that's really improved. 54 missed tackles through 3 games in 2024. We've cut that down to 30. And you guys know that I feel like it can still be better, but that's quite a significant improvement. The one thing I would say, the East Tennessee State quarterback wasn't necessarily on that schedule. He's a pretty good player, but Grant's really pleased with that. From a special team standpoint, I do want to give a lot of credit to those coaches. We're a little bit new, we're a little bit young at that position with the leadership, and they've done a good job. But I think we've had 6 humongous missed opportunities to put the fear of God of people on film. We've had 4 missed block punts, okay, that schematically it's drawn up and dialed up perfectly. So we're taking a hard look at technique and fundamentals when it comes to that phase of the game. And then do we have the right people in the places that they need to be in order to execute the play? And I really look forward to our special teams matchup this week. The coverage units have not been challenged. Point blank, period. And so I hope we have our daubers up on the attention that it's going to take to cover kicks in these next couple 6-7 weeks, which, by no means is easy. Hidden yardage, we're at a +93 number, but last week it was -68. We'd like to be +100, okay, whether that's an average or game to game, whatever that might be. And so I'm not upset about how the special teams play, but, God, there's more out there for us, and that's got to be a huge edge going into this ball game on Saturday. We got to cultivate opportunities, be aggressive in the return game. I mean, I think punters are doing a really good job. I listened to the TV stuff. I listened to everything. All right, they are pinning Jackson on the boundary. They are pinning him on the sideline. You can tell they're really paying attention to that. So we got to cultivate some opportunities for him, whether that's with pre-snap looks or something else. We need the ball in his hands, and we need to be aggressive. The kickers and punters last week, we brought in some help for those guys. The one thing this staff lacks is the ability to help kickers and punters, but we're well aware of it, and we've really got some really good relationships out there with some special team guys. They've stepped forward. They've had their best week of practice by far. Offensively, we're +31 in the middle 8. It's not just an offensive stat. We've given up 0 points in the middle 8. And so really pleased with that. Looking at the pass game, big plus. We're all aware we're ahead of schedule probably a little bit, or whatever that was the feeling that we all had. But our timing and our rhythm and guys being on their spots and being on their depth is going to be critical. That continues to improve. Third down percentage, it is what it is, guys. It must get better. We have had 4 wasted third downs, 2 victory knees as far as the national numbers go. All right, we've been in 2 situations where it was 4-down territory. You're calling it a 2nd down. And then we've had 1 where it's, the score indicated what our play call was, but overall our numbers not scratching the surface there. Tailback run game, I just think it's as simple as guys finishing with more detail, not effort. Our effort is really at a high level with the backs and the tight ends and the fullbacks and the O-line for sure. But we've got to finish with fundamentally with a little bit more detail. Homecoming this weekend. Just want to start off by first and foremost, congrats to Craig Dahl and his family. I got a couple notes up here, but Craig had 229 tackles in his career, eight and a half TFLs. A lot of people don't know it, but back at the combine when they used to have the 60-meter long shuttle, he had the record for that at one point. And it's been really, really fun getting to know Craig over the time. And I'm really excited for his family, but in particular his teammate and brother, Brian. And so it'll be good to have those guys on campus. As we look forward to South Dakota, I'm not going to keep rambling on and on here. I think it simply comes down to Bison Pride. When Bison Pride's on point, we'd like to think that we're winning on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We have had a bye week, and we've practiced really well, but I'm urging our guys to come out with a great sense of detail and energy and juice tonight. I think that'll lead to a really good game. They have our full attention after dominating and controlling the pace of the game for 15 minutes last year. Okay, where we were off, whatever. Okay, then it took some real quarterback grit for us to scramble around and make a bunch of plays in the middle part of the game. And then we had a 20-yard drive where typically that would, kind of wrap things up for us. But South Dakota showed the toughness, program culture, the coaching, the technique, the fundamentals, the awareness to basically, come back from 11 with 4 minutes left. And so this is a really good football team. They've beaten us at homecoming in 23, I believe. And that wasn't a real outstanding showing. And so if today I'm on edge a little bit, it's because we're going out there to practice, and we're going to practice really well. And what really matters is how we do that. And then that should lead into and cultivate into an unbelievable, homecoming day, celebration, all those things, because we should play loose and play fun and have a bunch of fun with our brothers. With that, let's get rocking and rolling with some questions.
Ends, you lost Stuffle, but I think you're spreading it around a little bit now to 4 guys.
Yeah, and you guys know I'm eagerly still working on it. We are, but it's been good. We've got them going down the field vertically. I don't know if you guys recognize, Finn Diggins' catch came out of 13 personnel last week. A big set. We motioned him out there. I mean, it's improved. It is. But I think we're cultivating some new thoughts and new ways to look at what that spot can give us. And I think if people have to play those guys, a little more 50-50, that's always an advantage for the offense. But most certainly at this point in time, I would say, God, we appreciate Joe Stuffle, but those guys are, maybe resetting a standard as a group, and I'd like to see those guys continue to be involved.
Has Finn been more involved in the passing game than maybe?
Yeah, for sure. Finn Diggins, I mentioned this to the team, and for his family's sake, I can tell you right now, Finn Diggins today is a guy that, the respect level I have for him for standing in front of the group and saying, hey, I wasted some years here. I'm the best version of myself in my senior year is just phenomenal. He's 7% body fat down. He's moving around at an all-time rate, and he's still battling an MCL to some degree with the brace. My hat goes off to guys like Finn Diggins, and we've had a lot of those guys in our program that wake up and decide that it ain't going to be me in my senior year that lets this club down. So far, so good for Finn Diggins. He's really provided a punch there.
Tim, for the guys on defense that were on the field at the end of the game last year, is that unsaid? Do you need to say anything about how you just addressed what went down?
No, we talked about it. I said, guys, there should be plenty of guys in this room, and they probably got my drift, that should want to go out there and play this game. Last year, we did not turn them over 3 times on really good opportunities. Okay, Will Mozart comes off the edge, strip sack, ball's on the ground. We decide not to get it. We can't catch the ball and get a foot down. All right, and then we dropped Lashaka, I hope you're doing well. He's drops in zone coverage, and we can't catch that frickin' ball. Okay, so there's multiple opportunities in that game that we decided not to make the play instead of making it. That would have flipped field position, would have flipped. I'm certain of the outcome of the game. We could never captivate momentum, and to their credit, South Dakota did a great job of keeping us off balance being gritty and being stern in their run game, but then also, they were getting deep enough into their call card. You guys, we saw the gauntlet. Multiple screens, a reverse and a round. And so it's imperative that we make those plays this year.
How close do they have that team this year than what you saw?
Well, they're coming on. It's easy to look at the guys they've lost up front. I give a lot of credit. And Tim Morrison, I know him for a long time from Iowa, has worked with the O-line. They got a good O-line coach. You can see that they're really coming together as an O-line. Now, for me to sit here and tell you, they only know if they're as talented as they were last year. I'm not interested in that. But as far as combinations go and getting on aim points in the run game, they are really an improving outfit. Okay, they really are. I think with the running back loss, provided opportunity for the next guy, and he had a big week last week. And so we're playing it as status quo. They've got a really good slot receiver. Really impressed with. Let me get the names. I don't want to mess that up. Really impressed with Fenner. Okay, and then Phillips at running back, and then Aiden Ballman at quarterback are the three guys that we're kind of highlighting. But that's not to slight anybody else. They got depth at tight end. I don't know. That's a good question. I just know up front they seem to be getting in sync. There seems to be the chemistry, and they're coming off not a bye, so they're going to be able to leverage that.
Jim, you were here when Joe Chapman moved the program to Division One. How important was that? With him going in the Hall of Fame. How important was that sort of what he did for the university?
That decision's huge, right? I mean, those guys. The way I understand it, him, Gene, and Craig kind of getting together and talking about this, and then it was President Chapman's vision to say, we can do this, we need to do this, and I'm behind it. Me specifically, I remember sitting next to him on a plane and having an unbelievable conversation. I have a lot of respect for him. I know there's a lot of people in this area that do, and congratulations to President Chapman on that. It's not a football thing, but obviously we're recognizing it in athletics, for all of us, and I think his vision was one that's been a success, and I know there's a lot of doubt behind that, but humongous, right?
Coach, you have a lot of young players on this roster that have stepped up. What have you seen, as you get ready for this conference slate, that their growth from fall camp to where we're at now?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're not young anymore. I haven't come in here and never said the word young, I don't think. I've said inexperienced, so forth. Bo Johnson's playing at a high level, right? Williams is a good player. A bunch of growth. I mean, we're really going out there, and we're really doing a good job, I think, of some competitive type situations, whether it's 2-minute compete. For years we only did 2-minute, 3 steps up front. Okay, no plays on the ball. Let's get the situations taught. We are going 2-minute compete once a week, and then we're going with the other drill another time. And that's been very successful as far as getting to see those guys be in critical situations and grow. The safety position really stands out to me because it's like those guys that are playing a ton are really carrying those next guys along pretty good. And a lot of credit's got to go to Devin on that. I'm trying to think specifically, inside those guards are really battling and fighting, for every inch. It's just a matter of can you get them enough repetitions where they can start taking the next step forward to be dominant? I think over the next 2-3 weeks, it's imperative that as a coaching staff, we know what we have up there. Is this 4th and 1 and it's the Lions last night? Or is this 4th and 1 like it's a wrap? And we're getting a yard. I don't know if we've necessarily proved that or been able to prove that in the middle of a third quarter, 24-14 game either way. So maybe a little bit early. I know I dodged Dom on that question too about the O-line. I think we're going to learn a lot about our O-line this week. This defensive front, including the linebackers, is very big and strong. We will have to strain for 60 minutes to get every yard out there. And versus the bull rush, we're going to have to get our hands inside and our cleats in the ground because they go 325 at one D tackle and 310 at the other, and their DNs are all north that play of 250, 255. It's going to be – they know what they're doing defensively, and they play to their players' strengths.
Some of the challenges in preparing for a quarterback like Bauman, who's
Well, he's experienced. Honestly, Aiden's a kid. This will be his second trip here. Okay, we played him down there in basically kind of a playoff environment. He's been to the sectional final up there at this guy's a seasoned guy. He's not going to be blown away, regardless if it's one of our best dome appearances or not, I think he'll handle that pretty good. The challenge with him is that he's stubborn in a positive way. Like, this guy knows what 3rd and 11 means. It's dang hard, to convert 3rd and 11. He checks the ball down. Unbelievable. He gets through his progressions fast, and he's not afraid to get completions. And to that point, that's what we're kind of stressing on offense is completions over conversions. Good things happen when the ball gets completed, right? And so he does a really good job with that. And then he's ultimately, and I made these comments last year, they don't seem to be checking as much things as they did last year. Okay, so I don't know if that's a change in the OC or whatever, but he's got total command over protections, and he's got total command over the run game. If we show a blitz too early, he'll get it to a better surface. If we, are in a certain look versus, and they got play action or something called they don't like, he'll get it called to the right play. He's impressive that way. The football IQ is high. And like I told you guys last year, I know the family. Unbelievable mom, dad played a long time. This guy's well coached up and a mature young man.
Running back Phillips came out of nowhere this year.
Yeah.
Did he come out of nowhere for you too? Did you know about him?
No, I didn't know much about him because you were so focused on number 7, who's been out, and number 3, Pierre, who's a heck of a player, and then their number 5 from last year, right? I mean, was a phenomenal player. So it's hard when you're going back and forth on this year's film versus some things from last year. I think it's important that we do that with conference opponents when we know each other so well. Yeah, I mean, you were eager to see who would be the next guy to carry it, and then obviously, he's doing an unbelievable job. I mean, 72 carries for 517 yards. Started the last 2 games after Pierre's injury, so.
Update on Chris Harris, where he's at.
Yeah, Chris is doing well. I think it's a matter of how well does he get through. There's a fine line, right? Like, we need Chris because of his leadership and his ability. But it's one of those positions that are pretty deep for us. And I'd hate to rush him back. Like, okay, he's going to be number 1 on these 24 plays. I think there's a really strong chance he plays. But at the same time, I think that I want to be real conscious of, what are his yards today, high-speed yardage. Does he hit something close to his max today or tomorrow? Before we make that decision on how much we'll use him. But he came to me, he says, Coach, I'm playing. I said, well, we'll let you know here, kind of thing. But he's eager, and thankfully we're deep at that position. That was one of the things that allowed us to kind of, with Raj last year, I mean, it's nice to have 12 guys, but who are we going to identify as the 3 that can get operating in the game plan and supported by 2 or 3 others?
You mentioned the lack of missed tackles. What is the challenge with Phillips? I mean, 225,
Well,
big bowling ball there.
Well, not to let any big back, guys, it's all coach speak. You don't want a big back to ever get going downhill. And so I think some knockback in the defense from the defensive line against their O-line, make him go laterally a little bit. I would say that about any big back. It kind of played out against Semo a little bit. Preston Brown's brother never really got downhill. But that's kind of the challenge. He's, a slashing big guy. You just hate to see him get plays started on the aim point or the origin of the play is how I call it. Like, we got to disrupt that a little bit. I think 5's a good player too, though. He's been productive.
Coach, what do you want to see out of your front 7 as, South Dakota's going to look to, probably run that ball early on in the
Well,
downs?
it's just that I don't know if they're going to look to run or not. They've got this capable passer. He's a little behind schedule compared to where he's been. But to make them one-dimensional, again, like any other week, is critical, and not let them get off with the start they had last year. I mean, they really hurt us with the outside zone play, especially formations into the boundary. And so having some answers for that. I thought Grant did a really good job, from the second quarter all the way to the middle of the fourth quarter, is saying, you are not doing this against us. You're going to have to do that. And then you saw that Aiden and their receivers were able to beat us in other ways where our secondary is compromised. It's that whole thing, right? But if it's 3rd and 8 and it's 3rd and 7 because the D-line's reestablishing a new line of scrimmage, okay, those days have usually paid off for NDSU, and I think that's what's critical.
Tim, you describe Chance Simons and getting here, his rodeo background of what that does for you defensively up front?
Well, Chance getting here was – Cody had recruited him. We had him at camp. I think at that time he was a little bit of a tweener, and he kind of still is a little bit of a tweener guy. But, you love he's got a lot of his dad in him, which I really enjoyed on the official visit. That's one of the times that we methodically kind of worked through that, and his timeline and having the connection to Coach Cooper down at Arizona State really helped all those things. But the more I got to know Chance and his father, it was just really clear that this guy's pretty competitive. I think some of the nuance, which is very little in our defense, is still, it's a work in progress. But to have him aboard, it provides unbelievable depth. We haven't had, Stenbratten's going to play. He looks good. He'll be back out there practicing today, but he tweaked his groin. But it was kind of like, okay, Stenbratten, we've got some depth at that position, and he's really getting better at becoming a complete player.
Your first year in Fargo was 2006. That was Craig Dahl's senior year.
Yeah.
Do you have memories of Craig's senior year?
It's interesting, like him and Schomer, and I'm not trying to steal Craig's thunder, but like we've had some great safeties. Okay, Grimsley, Dudzik, Colton Hegel, Tootsie I wasn't here for. And I know I'm missing some guys, right? A player or two that was no longer with us, but I guess my point is those guys were. Schomer was 6'1" or 6 foot 208, and if you back in those days you ran a middle seam, you were getting your block knocked off. The rules have changed some, right? And then Craig was down there consistently all the time, and just if it wiggled, he tackled it. And I remember him being such a big presence back there. There were two of the guys with Willie Mack, playing all these squats and halves, and they used to have to spray and get deep and cover too. And the amount of ground both of those guys could cover was really good. But Craig was so big and fast. And then, like, the more at that time, I didn't know anything about getting into the NFL. But you kind of started seeing, like, holy cow, this guy's got some measurables, the tools. I was actually at the NFC Championship game when the Giants beat them in 2007, and Craig was out with the ACL. And he did, bounce back and had a career. We always kind of talk about that a little bit because it was minus 23, third coldest game in NFL history. But, no, just nothing in particular. I was so young and flying around and trying to learn myself that, it was hard to cultivate a relationship with a starting safety. But I do remember, and this should be noted, Willie Matt Garza said those two together were as good as any safety combination that he had coached. Not played in because he was part of the posse, which was really good. But that included Barry, that got drafted by the Chiefs with Tennessee, I believe. Pretty cool. One or two more?
You get a chance to go to the cop wedding?
No.
Think of that over the
I send a healthy check to all these weddings, and I wish I would get something in return at some point. But, no, we kid about that because, like, we don't send out dogs' birthdays and stuff. But, no, I think that's for the players, especially at this stage. If it would have been in February in Fargo, I would have stopped over. But during the season, they needed to be able to have a good time. Coach Olson was there to hold down the fort, and so happy for those guys. And it sounded like everything went good. My phone didn't ring at 3 a.m. on a Saturday, which it doesn't around here much anymore. But no, I did not go.
Jalen Edey is or for starting. Is he possible starter for you now?
Is it? He's been. Yeah, I think. No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't necessarily go there, but that's probably Devin's way of saying. That's a small little token of appreciation that I like to do a lot more. I just don't like messing with you guys. I like listening to direct depth chart and not trying to play any games that way. But Talon is really. He made a big play yesterday. Talon is really coming on. There's some real strong depth there. In Will Style, here we go with the miles per hour, but he hit a new personal high yesterday. And he's made a couple big plays on kickoff cover. I mean, I really like that group right now because there's constant competition for playing time. And I wouldn't lose any sleep or hesitate if any one of those 5 guys were playing. And then we're going to get Archibald back, I think, in a week and a half.
Last week, are you checking out the other Valley team? I know you're recruiting, but were you seeing what everybody else was doing last week?
Well, I appreciate you bringing the question up because what last week did provide for me was to kind of look at, okay, we've got boom, 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 boom. Okay, so building out these schedules of practice plans and stuff, and that's something I really enjoy about the job. I mean, schedules and this, that, and non-league and all that stuff. Missouri Valley football plays here, and I think we got to run the gauntlet of a couple pretty gosh darn capable teams that have played some really good football. The individual stretches, and so, yeah, taking a look at what they've done and who they've done it against. I think like most of college football in the first 4 weeks, there's been nothing but inconsistency for most. And there's kind of some unknowns, which I think kind of makes things fun. But we're going to find out a lot here in the next 2 to 3 weeks about how this whole thing will shake out and things that don't matter. You know, I want our team to be focused on going 1-0, compete and prove tough. But it does give you a chance to look at, hey, there's some, like I said, I think South Dakota, 2-2, they've played some good people. They're improving like crazy. I'm fully aware that UND's a much better football team. There's a spirit up there and an energy, and they got some really good coaches. South Dakota State's playing first-class defense, and offense is getting better. Yeah, I'm aware. And we got to continue to, you know, as part of my job as a head coach, to be able to kind of just track some things. But it's also to keep our assistant coaches and players in a singular focus day to day to go 1-0.